very much. I'm the president for the International Association of University, and I'm very happy to open this webinar. It's a joint webinar where we are launching a global conversation on women in leadership in higher education. And the specific topics today, the gender sensitive institute structures and policies. And we will come to good actions, I hope, at the end. We are three organizers and two from regions, Europe and Africa, and IAU as the global representatives. And very brief, IAU is the global network of higher education institutions and associations. And we partner with many national, international, and intergovernmental partners. And that includes UNESCO, who was also the inaugurated the IAU 1950. We do have priorities in leadership, in internationalization, in higher education for sustainable development and technology. And I would say that all these priorities have gender perspectives, and we have to look at gender perspectives in all of them. And we do so through sharing expertise, trends analysis, advices, and not at least publication, and I will refer to some of them later on. But you can find them on the webpage of IAU. So for this opening, I once again would like to say that I'm very pleased that we three organizations now partners for actually strengthening and also developing gender perspective and gender equality in higher education, and not at least in leadership. So welcome everyone. Gulsun. You're muted.
Gulsun, we cannot hear you.
Am I the second speaker? Because I thought that I'm the third one.
No, it was supposed to be Lucy. So
yeah, it's supposed to, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We should have Lucy. We should have Lucy first now.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that introduction. My name is Lucy Heddy, and I am the CEO of Education Sub Saharan Africa, or ESSA. ESSA is a small NGO with a majority African team based in Africa and the UK, working to connect data and evidence on education from Africa with those who have the power to improve the system. And that includes educators, policymakers, and young people themselves. Our vision is one of high quality education in Sub-Saharan Africa that allows young people to fulfill their ambitions and strengthen society. And our mission starts with universities and colleges, using data and evidence to drive a dramatic improvement in outcomes for young people. We work across the student journey, looking at issues of access, quality, and transition to work. And we also support researchers working on education, leveraging the power of Africa's universities and colleges to improve outcomes for young people at all levels of education. Now, one of the biggest challenges with working to improve tertiary education is ensuring that those improvements are felt by everyone, no matter their background or, critically, their gender. Time and again, we have seen how problems in the system are amplified for women, from financing their studies to being supported through to successful careers. Brilliant organisations such as Farway, Award, Mawazo Institute and Rue Forum are doing, and many others are doing tremendous work to break the bias and change how women experience tertiary education. However, such organisations are often forced to work in the dark due to the lack of data available on women's experiences. And so it's been an extraordinary privilege to work alongside some of these organisations to establish the baseline for female leadership in African tertiary education institutions and collecting data and evidence to help them advocate for, implement and scale up their programmes. Thank you to the IAU and EWORA for your partnership in co-hosting this event today and raising the profile of such a critical topic. And thank you for everyone joining here today. I really hope that you enjoy the presentations and that the evidence you see discussed here today inspires further action and collaboration. Thanks so much.
Okay. May I start, Hilji?
Yes, please.
Okay. Dear colleagues, I explained at the beginning that I'm the president of EWORA. EWORA is a European Women Rectors Association established in 2015. And in fact, our initiative started in 2009 as a platform, but we converted it into an association in 2015, established in Brussels. So we have over 100 members, women leaders from universities, basically from European universities. And now I would like to turn to my short contribution. Dear colleagues, it's a great pleasure for EWORA to organize this second webinar for celebrating International Women's Day 2022 in collaboration with International Association of Universities and ESSA, titled as Women in Leadership in Higher Education, Global and Regional Perspectives. Before I share my thoughts with you on the subject area, I would like to express our deep concern about the Ukraine invasion by Russia, which is not only creating threat for Ukraine, but also creating serious risk for the peace across the world. We do hope that in the nearest future, the peace will be achieved between Ukraine and Russia without sacrificing the rights of Ukrainian people. Dear colleagues, gender equality is one of the fundamental principles of European Union, and EU has been promoting it as a core activity since 1957 with EU treaties. Treaty of Rome, 1957, Treaty of Amsterdam, 1997, Treaty of Lisbon, 2007-2009, and the measures to increase the women representation in all segments of higher education and research have been extended and implemented since then by the framework programs throughout the years. All of these efforts bringing the obligation to eliminate inequalities and ensuring promoting equality between men and women also introduces gender equality as a determining factor for potential candidates for the accession to the EU. Unfortunately, improvements in achieving gender balance in higher education and research areas have been slow, unfortunately very slow. I would like to share just 3 figures from the She Figures 2021, released on 24th of November 2021. If you look at the A-grade positions ratios, in 2018, She Figures, it was 24%. It went up to 26.2% in the She Figures 2021. The situation is even worse in the engineering and technology area. A-grade positions in engineering and technology areas, in 2018, it was 15%, and it went up to 17.9% in 2021. If we look at the women heads of institutions ratio, it was 20% in the year 2015, and now in the 2021 She Figures, it went up to 23.6%. So we can see that there are improvements, but they are really very slow. Although European Commission has been taking serious steps since 1957, unfortunately, improvements have not been able to realize our dreams of having equal representations at all levels. Now Horizon Europe is taking further steps to implement new requirements for funding applications of European Commission funded programs called as Gender Equality, Strengthen Cross-Cutting Priority in Horizon Europe. It has 3 levels. First one, gender equality plans. This is an eligibility criteria for applying funding. Integration of gender dimension in research and innovation content. This was the second one. And the third one is gender balance in research teams. This is a ranking criterion. I do hope that gender equality plans will be successful to achieve gender balance at all levels of higher education and research in our universities in the years to come. Dear colleagues, I think as women academic leaders, we should be the most supportive group to do our best to increase the ratio of women professors in our universities, to pave the way to make them able to reach the leading positions in our universities and in the higher education and research systems of our countries. There is an old saying in Turkish, maybe similar old saying exists in all languages. In order to be a master, you have to be better than your master, and also you have to educate and train new masters who are better than you. This should be our main goal, to support and encourage our women professors, to make them able to reach leadership positions, not only occupying the positions, but taking serious steps towards achieving gender balance in every aspect of university functions and actions, to create better conditions for all young women academics. I would like to congratulate, celebrate all of us for the International Women's Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gulsun. I would like to maybe turn then to Pam. Would you like to speak on behalf of the IAU, and then Lucy on behalf of ESSA, add a bit on how would you set the theme for this conversation today? Would you like to add just a little? And then we will give the floor to Carmen Fenol. Is that right? Yes, good. Pam.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would start with the global perspective from IAU, and I have just been in a meeting in Sweden. I can say that the hindrances for women is similar all over the world. Although we have socioeconomic, cultural, and economical in general different perspectives and also prerequisites, I would say that there are very, very similar hindrances for women to take leadership in higher education. And the COVID has also shown the shortcomings. And let us take the shortcomings shown in the experience from COVID to be also guiding us for the future, because it's highlighting really what the hindrances are. So what I will do is I look into the global figures, and International Association of University has the only global database on higher education institutions in the world. It's called the WED database, and it's having all the authorized higher education institutions all around the world. So almost a little bit more, I would say today, than 20,000 institutions are in this database. It's also ID numbers on each of the institutions in that database. And it collects 196 countries. So I would say that that's all over the world. And this database is, of course, very, very important information to get knowledge about higher education institutions and leaderships, but also to reach out. And UN has used that database to reach out to all the higher education institutions around the world. And what do we find? We find national higher education structures, quality assurance in institutions, and I would say that gender should be a part of that. Governing bodies, and also credential and admissions that you can get. So for women leadership, going into this database and see what it is. Gulsun, you had the SHE report, but looking into the database globally, we can say that out of the higher education institutions, there are more than 20,000, 17% on a global perspective are women. In Europe, we find that around 20% of the rectors or vice chancellors are women. And in Africa, just 7% of the rectors are women. So I think those figures speaks for themselves, but also we have to see that there are, of course, diversity within this different regions and where we look. So we have to look behind what is giving in those figures. Leadership, now we talk about leadership on the rectors level. In my point of view, leadership on all levels, from research leader to the leading the educational programs, all parts of leadership is very important because that brings the women also up to the top leadership in the future. So we have to see already from the schools that we have a gender balance. We have to see that the students at the universities and the staff at the universities have a gender balance. And we have to see that gender balance is equality in all what we do. And I think that you also brought forward, Gulsun, that what we do in the higher education institutions, that will also be reflected in the society at large. So what is behind those figures? I would also like to highlight the global clusters that IAU has started 2018. Higher education for sustainable development has been part of the priorities for IAU since the 90s. And we started 2018 clusters on one champion university for each of the SDGs, and SDG 5 is Bologna University. And they have recently published a paper together with the IAU looking into good examples. How could you do to promote gender equality? And that are perspectives from all over the world. So I really encourage you to read those, because I think what we need is good practices. What is working, and also to take that into your own institution and your own perspectives in your own country. So the aim of the cluster is actually to create network for synergies and capacity to act. That is important. Also to provide evidence to policy and decision makers. And you brought up, Lucy, the importance of having data. So I would say that leadership actions and support in all activities, what we are doing in the universities, is very important to inspire and also to promote young women. And of course, I think that you, Lucy, will bring up the different, behind the scene, what is the real hindrance? And those are the things we have to tackle. And we also have to make awareness to policymakers and to governments about what's going on. I don't see the higher education institutions themselves can do all of it. We need to get the civil society with us. We need to get the politicians and government with us to do this. And I think it's urgent. We have seen those figures for a long time, and we might go backwards if we don't do anything after the COVID situation. And I'm again very happy that we have this discussion, and I hope that the panel also will look forward what to do and how could we share experience. So that's my setting scene.
Thank you very much. We're going around the world, and I would like to give the floor to Lucy Hedy to also then give the floor to your colleagues probably to set the scene for Africa. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Hilija. So I'm going to hand directly over to Jennifer Ude, who has been leading our research on female leadership in higher education in Africa, and our colleague Krista, who has been helping to undertake this research as well. So over to you, Jennifer.
Thanks very much, Lucy and everybody here today. So really ESSA's work around women leading started as a result of some work we did in 2018. We conducted research and analysis in partnership with the African Association of Universities, the Population Reference Bureau, and the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, formerly NCTE. Which revealed that only 8% of professors at public universities in Ghana were women. We had further discussions with faculty members in Sub-Saharan Africa and really highlighted the lack of evidence about the role of universities and colleges in Sub-Saharan Africa in equipping women for leadership opportunities. So therefore, we initiated we initiated the Women Leading Initiative, and that aims to unlock the potential of female leaders in education in Sub-Saharan Africa. The focus really is on increasing the number of women in leadership positions within universities and colleges, but also supporting female students to develop leadership skills for their careers beyond university. And our State of Women Leading report is the first output of our Women Leading initiative. It really captures the insights from existing research and the current perspectives of women in Africa who are at different stages of their leadership journey. We will be circulating the full report during and following this webinar, but to contribute this afternoon to setting the scene, my colleague Krista and I will be highlighting some of the key findings and the conclusions of the study, and which will really focus on the barriers that we identified, the critical skills for leadership, and the focus areas for further action. Krista.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the results presented in our report were largely based on a survey that was rolled out between November 2020 and February 2021. So within this survey, there was an analysis of responses from over 400 female faculty, students, and early career graduates. In addition to the online survey we rolled out, we also conducted interviews with female leaders across Sub-Saharan Africa. And then finally, there was also a literature analysis of female leadership in Africa, which included literature from policy-making bodies, business, media, and academia. Okay, so thank you, Jennifer. So within our research, we're able to identify some of the key barriers to female leadership developments in these different institutions that we were looking at. So the top four were social cultural expectations, limited access to mentorship opportunities, and limited networking opportunities. And then finally, unconscious workplace bias. So for social cultural expectations, as many of us probably know, in most parts of Africa, taking care of the home is still kind of seen as being the primary role for women. So a lot of women are raised with that view. So having that in mind, a lot of them often lack the confidence to lead, excuse me, and as such, they're less likely to even seek leadership positions, which would then go against what society's traditional views of them are. For the second one being the mentorship opportunities, from our research, we realized that women typically do have access to mentors for guidance, but then they lack the adequate sponsors who can advocate for their promotion, who can introduce them to key stakeholders, and who can actually just give them exposure to senior roles. For the networking as well, with the kind of networks that are existing right now, we realize that they are the proverbial old boy networks, which automatically exclude women. So they are not able to access some of this inside information. They're not able to access these social networks, which the members typically have. And then finally, for the workplace bias as well, excuse me, most tertiary institutions across Sub-Saharan Africa are predominantly male. And as such, gender issues are often not really seen as a priority, which makes it difficult for women to even break into some of these leadership positions. Through our research, we asked the women we interviewed what they thought the most important skills for leadership were, and they identified these top 5. Conceptual skills, which emerged as the most important, which is basically critical thinking, decision-making, analytical abilities, and logical reasoning. And then following conceptual skills were the human skills and leadership ethics and value skills, which are largely integrity, trust, empathy, emotional intelligence, and social integration and networking.
One of the final questions that we asked during the survey was what the participants felt were the most important further actions that could take that would have the biggest impact on female leadership development in Africa. And our research really pointed to 4 key areas that would support leadership development for women. These are scholarships, leadership training and development programs, gender sensitive organizational structures and policies, and networking opportunities. For scholarships, it was really felt that scholarships would and have encouraged and motivated many women to take up leadership positions, really enabling them to take up these positions. It was felt that leadership training and development potentially could significantly contribute to the development of soft skills and the mindset of women. And gender sensitive organizational structures really pointing to the need to have supportive and inclusive environments within institutions. Here really speaking of the recruitment, the promotion and appointment processes within institutions, lacking transparency and being susceptible to gender bias. And finally, in universities and colleges, really networking, mentoring, role modeling, sponsorship, all of these areas were really viewed as powerful interventions that could really assist and support and guide young academics, especially females, as they develop into women leaders in education. So really our work contributes insights from women in Sub-Saharan Africa. It really provides guidance on where further research, evidence and action is needed to unlock the potential of women leaders in education. And our work shows that there's still significant underrepresentation of women in leadership positions across Sub-Saharan Africa. Specifically from our survey, 46% of the women surveyed said that they were dissatisfied with their current levels of leadership. And while we recognize that our findings can't be taken as fully representative of all women in Sub-Saharan Africa, it does support a knowing that more can be done and more should be done to support female leadership development. And also importantly, it's not just about the number of women in leadership positions. Our research also highlighted that it's also important to consider what types of support is required to sustain women that are already in leadership positions as well. We have the 4 main areas that we've identified. At ESSA, we've already begun to discuss these areas in more detail with stakeholders in Sub-Saharan Africa to dig deeper into these areas and co-create solutions which can be implemented. And so really today we're looking forward to the global conversation this afternoon, really specifically on one of those areas, gender sensitive organizational structures and policies. We will really welcome and encourage you all to share your perspectives, your ideas as we dig deeper into this topic in the discussions shortly. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer and Krista as well for this, for all these very good presentations. I would like to give the floor now to Carmen Fenol to also set the stage for Europe. And then we will have a poll question, so stay tuned for that. And then we will move into a panel debate with a series of questions that will be facilitated by Professor Mwenda and Tarangui from the Commission for University Education in Nairobi. So we first give the floor to you, Carmen.
Excuse me, I was silenced and I launched the presentation without turning my microphone on. Okay, can you see now the screen?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I was asked by the president of EWORA to prepare a very short abstract about the situation of research and the position of women in research, both in Europe and in Spain. And I have organized a very, very brief presentation in 3 parts, a little bit about key figures, a little bit about gender in the European research area, and then I will tell you just a glimpse of what we are doing in Spain and how we are there. So about key figures, this last edition has some examples and good practice from institutions and countries. This is very good and very useful. And it has also introduced several new indicators. Among them are things like the share of women in research, employment in the private sector, which we didn't know about before, and look at the numbers, how different they are from public institutions. Also, the precarious and part-time position by career stage and family status, which is, of course, higher in women, particularly in early stages and with children. The mobility of junior researchers is similar for men and women, but not for senior researchers. Senior men move much more than we do. And there are more and more research organizations with gender plans, at least in their websites. And there are interesting data in authorship, like senior women publish increasingly less than men, and this is particularly evident in STEM fields. And there is an increasing accounting for gender perspectives in research content. And about funding, I just want to share with you some data that I think are very, I don't know, they set the floor for discussion. You have here in the thick rectangles the funding, the proportion of women doing research in different countries, and in the small deep blue lines is the research and development expenditure. And as you see, it's very, very striking that in countries where we have more women in research, the funding is much lower, and the opposite is also true. So that's some thought for the future, for discussion. The numbers don't change too much. There are a lot of women at the lower levels of the career, but as we move upwards, these numbers drop very much. The same for decision-making positions, and there has been very, very little improvement since 2015, and in fact, only about 30% of the board members are women in research and higher education institutions, and the leaders of those institutions who were women are below 25%. So the news are that there are no news. There is nothing really new to report. Perhaps because of that, this fact is moving the European research area towards taking measure to try to change these things. And in this respect, the declaration is that this fact, this underrepresentation of women in leadership position is hindering really the growth of the European research area. And this is no surprise in an area where 40% of the population thinks that we should be primarily taking care of babies and houses, and men should be making money and having jobs. So there is a need for a strategy at European level to tackle all these problems. So in this respect, in research and in higher education, we are no different from other areas of the European Union. No. So because of all these things, for Horizon Europe, there are 3 main points to be developed, like promoting gender equality, ensuring gender balance in leadership, and integrating the gender dimension in research contents and programs. And in fact, the new European research area will be shaped through 14 actions, and the action 12 is the one that relates to gender equality. And please take note that gender equality goes together with diversity and inclusiveness. It's not gender, it's more than that. And this will be realized through having a gender equality plan. If you want to apply for any of the calls of the European research area, you have to include a gender dimension by default, and it will be evaluated for excellence. And increasing gender equality with a target of 50% of women working in Horizon Europe boards, in experts groups and evaluation committees, and gender balance among research teams. This will be also a criterion for ranking proposals with similar scores. So I will not stop here, but what is understood by a gender equality plan is clearly stated, and there has to be concrete measures and targets in a number of issues like the ones you have here. And this is really important, and I think this type of action will set the way to start changing things more effectively. Now, what about Spain? In Spain, we publish something similar to she figures since 2007, which is called Científicas en Cifras. We have other targeted statistics from the ministries, and we have had a feminist government, and we have now a feminist government, which really makes a difference. And what I have to tell you, I will not show you the numbers because in general they are very similar to the average in the European Union. Similar but not equal in all aspects, and I just want to stress something that in fact comes from she figures, which is this graph, figure 5 from she figures, where the proportion of researchers working under precarious contracts by sex is depicted. And I just took this part here where this is Spain. So we really are here at the very, very top of people, both men and women, working under precarious contracts. And this put all the junior researchers, but particularly women, under a very high vulnerability. So what we have now between our hands is an ongoing reform of the law for science, technology, and innovation, which was published in 2011, and now is being reformed more than 10 years later. And I want to show you how different laws in Spain changed the things for women in science. If you look at the glass ceiling index, since 2000 to 2010, there was a very marked decrease, and it was completely coincident, probably the result of all these legislative actions. So we do think that laws have a very, very strong power for change. And this reform is ongoing, and I belong to the Association of Women Researchers and Technologists in Spain, and we have been lobbying very strongly with the ministry to change things. And our position from the very beginning was to make that the law will include positive actions for gender equality. And we probably put our emphasis first in the fact that our constitution mandates positive actions to bridge gaps to all the public powers, that the positive actions are transient because they are not very well understood by the citizens, by the population. And for us, it's very important that we don't think, we know that women are not a minority that need to be taken care of. You really need to understand that point, and I don't like to see that gender issues are normally mixed with other equality related issues, because it's not the same. We are only asking for correcting an anomaly, and that is, if we are 50% of the population, we should be 50% of the leading positions in science and research and higher education. So with this background in mind, we made a series of demands. I will not go through all of them, of course. And of all these, the ones that are in red are included in the law, which are, okay, they are good measures, but they are not the most important for us. We want to continue lobbying to achieve the ones in purple, which are, we think they have much more transformational power, that is facilitating and promoting quotas. a preference selection, gender budgets with measurable goals in all calls of all sorts. And these gender budgets will go together with a budget reserve in all calls to launch complementary calls if the gender goals are not reached in the first place. No, we want that good practice in centers and departments has economic rewards, and non-compliance in centers and departments will have economic penalties. And we want to target junior researchers with specific actions. And the law will be voted in the parliament in the coming weeks. And what we remain to do, and will be very, very vigilant to that, is to scan the development of the law, because the law is just a general landscape in which the royal decrees and the different calls will be shaped. And we will be there making sure that at least the law is compliant with. And with that, I finish my presentation, and I will be glad to talk about anything you want regarding this Europe or Spain in this frame. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Fenol. This was a very good presentation, and digging a little bit deeper in the key figures. I think everybody will be pleased to have the link to the report, and also showcasing how different levels of leadership, also the government, can change things and have an impact. Yet you also showed that much more needs to be done, and that is very clear from your presentation. So please take part as well in the panel discussion afterwards, because people will have questions to you as well. We now have a very quick poll just to break between the two parts of the webinar today. And I invite my colleague to share the poll with you here, so that you can take that, if you please. So there you go. Can you access the poll? Does that work for everyone? No? Pam, you say no?
No, I couldn't.
You couldn't. So I think the panelists are not allowed to take part.
Okay.
but the participants do.
Well, why not?
Maybe, Carmen, you can stop sharing.
Oh, I'm still sharing.
Yes.
No, I'm not sharing.
Ah, okay. There we see your screen.
Oh, is it so? I don't understand why it doesn't show that I'm sharing. Let me see. Now I'm sharing.
I can stop it.
Yes, please.
So I think everybody had the opportunity to vote, but there's still some movement on the poll. And can people see the results? We see that we have 25% male participation in the webinar. We have 75 female, so that matches. Then from which regions of the world are the participants? We have a great participation from Sub Saharan Africa, 31%, good participation from North America, 9%, and 38% from Europe. 22% from Asia and Pacific, which is really nice, and the global participation in this webinar. I think we thank all the participants for being with us today. And then the expectations. You were all asked to indicate what your expectations were from for this workshop or webinar, and so the 71% indicated that it was to increase the awareness about cross-continental issues that was receiving the highest rate. Then there was also 46% indicated that people expect an increase in awareness about gender issues. Then 22% would like to hear more about recommendations for joint actions, and 27% about how to join a global working group on gender equality in higher education, which is very good, because that is what we hope to also trigger and organize post-webinar. So we thank our ESSA colleagues and friends now for also having facilitated this first poll. I would like, without further ado, to get to the next step in our webinar here today, and give the floor to Professor Mwenda Ntarangwi, who's the CEO of the Commission for University Education in Nairobi, Kenya. And you have the difficult task of leading this very interesting panel, and I give you the floor without further ado.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and happy International Women's Day from Kenya. I have the honor of having 4 very qualified members of my panel that I will want to have them quickly give us some sense of what they want to share, especially that we have been given such a wealth of background, talking about the databases that have been used and the numbers that are coming out of IAU, the structures, the percentages. I was actually struck by how well the numbers represented match what we're seeing here in Kenya, where out of all the vice chancellors or rectors, equivalent of rectors, we have 12% who are substantive. And when you add some of them that are in acting positions, the number becomes 16%. And that says something about women in higher education leadership. We also did see that there's some congruence between the barriers that bring low numbers of women leadership, not only in Sub Saharan Africa, but it also seems like in the case we've heard from EWORA, similar expectations of women in the domestic space and men out there making money. So without much more, let me ask our colleagues, starting with Professor Pam Fredman from IAU, if you can share quickly, what have you heard and how does it relate to your own experience and the experience of your region? Can you take about 3 minutes to do that, Pam, please?
Yeah, I don't think I need my 3 minutes. I had setting the scene about what I see from the global perspective. But listening to the others, this is confirming that we do have the same problems all over the world, although there are different backgrounds for this. And so that's what I want us to discuss and go forward. And I think that good examples on how to develop is something we also should discuss. They might be different, but one thing we haven't talked about, and that is the international merit system of advancing in higher education that we need to discuss, because that is difficult for most women.
Thank you, Pam. I think there's something we can learn from Spain. Let me ask my colleague from across the border, Professor Mary Okwakol, to share what she's heard and how does it relate to our own experience. She's had lots of experience across different institutions. What is your take? 3 minutes, Mary.
Yeah, what I've heard is that the experiences across the continents are the same. I had the privilege of attending an EWORA meeting in Malmo University in 2019, and what I heard resonated to what I'm familiar with in Africa. The challenges that are faced in Africa when it comes to leadership and management, I mean, accessing leadership and management by women are the same as those across the world. But when we started, the African Women, the Forum for African Women Vice Chancellors in 2016, at that time, the percentage of female vice chancellors was about 2.67. There were at that time 1,500 universities and only 40 were headed by women. I'm glad that this evening I've heard that that has come up to 7%. So the causes also are the same. We have causes or factors which are at personal level. For instance, in order to access a position, a leadership position, you must have the qualifications, a PhD, for instance, that is very necessary. You need administrative experience. You need soft skills. All these are very important if women are to access leadership positions. There are a number of constraints that lead to women having a problem. Recruitment, appointment, promotions, and practices generally hinder women from accessing leadership positions. Why? Because they are essentially competitive. And considering the background or the historical background of women's access to leadership positions, they find it difficult to compete. So it's important that they are empowered in one way or another at personal level by building their capacities, at institutional level by institutions having structures and policies that empower them to access leadership positions. Some leadership positions, I didn't hear this, but I know some leadership positions are as a result of political appointments. And that has assisted, from my experience in my country, has assisted to get women to positions of leadership, either to councils, senates, or vice chancellorships and other leadership positions.
All right. Thank you very much. You've mentioned the structures and challenges that women face in rising to the levels that we want them to be. Maybe for a bit, if you can tell us some of the opportunities you see to correct what Mary is talking about. Any opportunities you see from the circles of your own influence and where you are placed as a student leader? What are the opportunities that women can get to rise and challenge some of these realities that we're seeing from our colleagues talking about right now?
Yeah, as I said, in my country, some positions are political appointments, like when a new university is being started, task forces are appointed. But what I've seen is that if women are given the opportunity to lead teams to establish universities, that exposes them. It gives them an opportunity to prove their worth. And when it comes to appointing substantive vice chancellors, which appointment comes after an election, they are ready to compete because they have had that exposure and experience. It has happened. Similarly, for councils in my country, the Ministry of Education and Sports appoints, if it is a public university, appoints 3 members of the council. And it has so happened that some of these appointees end up being chairpersons of those councils. And it has happened also with women that they have been able to access such opportunities. Women can also help themselves by forming organizations which enable them to network, like the FAO-VC, which I talked about, networking with the other organizations like EWORA and others. We lack capacity of women. I mean, capacity, there is need to, what I've heard also here, the need to build the capacity of women by having trainings, mentoring. Mentorship is very, very important in ensuring that women have the capacity to lead, because many women have what it takes, but they lack the confidence, and they need women who have gone through it. They need role models. They need those women that can show them the way. And it happens that many of the women that have been at the top, like the ones who have heard speak here, have got influence. And if you're at the top of a university, certainly you have your area of influence is quite big. So such women should take the responsibility of mentoring other women.
Mary, I know, let me not cut you short, but you are also a woman of influence. What have you done in your own circles of influence to help bring in one quick way? Can you give us an example?
I've got quite a number of examples. For instance, when I was chairperson of Forum for African Women Educationists in Uganda, I initiated the starting of a program for higher education, because before then, women could access scholarships up to S6. And then after that, if they did not qualify to get a government scholarship, they would, since most of them were needy, in fact, not most of them, all of them were needy, they would not continue. They would end there. And some of them were bright and they were able to access higher education. So I did initiate that. And right now it has assisted hundreds of women to access higher education. I have many examples, but I know you don't have time. When I was a vice chancellor at Busitema, I did also start a system where women who are bright but needy could get assisted by a waiver of fees, and also assisted to get accommodation so that they're able to get education. In addition to that, I started a system where admission for students is such that we get 50-50. You know, we admit 50-50. How do we do that? Let the women compete and the men compete. And if they are qualified women to make the 50%, they get 50%. I found when I started with STEM University, there was 13% women students, female students. As I speak now, we have 34% of students. And finally, at National Council for Higher Education, where I am now, I've started a gender unit specifically to ensure that higher education, as you're aware, National Council for Higher Education is responsible for regulating quality of higher education in the country. And it didn't have a gender unit. I've established a gender unit to ensure that the gender considerations are firmly taken into account across the higher education institutions.
Thank you, Mary. Follow a bit, Lena. What are some of the ways in which you can move the agenda of getting women into leadership positions? What are some of those strategies we might want to instill as you look at your own context? Follow a bit.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. First of all, I want to say that I'll be talking about changing institutional and individual mindset, which is something to consider, given that higher education is complex. As much as there are biases against women pursuing leadership, women must break this stereotype by experiencing or expressing their interest in some of the key leadership positions, thereby reducing some of the misconception that people have about women expected to take charge of household, keep meals ready and home, or considered as emotional or indecisive. Whereas studies shows that women are more likely than men to display transformational leadership attributes that encourage innovation and growth through teamwork. So women need to boast their knowledge, behavior, and attitude in the field of work and develop open-mindedness in changes in the workplace. They also have to achieve a context where they have mentors with experience and vision, whereby these mentors can understand where they are coming from, understand the specific problems that they face as women at workplace, and maybe they can enable women to build self-confidence. I will also talk about the masculinity nature of higher education, whereby we experience a lot of homosocial culture. Homosocial culture is a situation where we employ our own. Male tend to employ more of male in higher education than women. So women are not, they are only given the lower academic levels and middle management positions. I read somewhere when I was doing my research that in Ireland, women are only given top executive position in higher education if they are professors, whereas men are given top position without being professors in the same context. So I want to talk about leadership program for women who inspire to be leaders. But I feel these programs, if they are any, should focus on self-confidence, self-worth, self-esteem, and capacity development. Women should be taught what confidence is and how to have it. I believe that young girls should be mentored in the area of confidence. So I want to urge the leaders that we have here in the panel or the participants that they should be able to mentor young girls who see them as leaders, especially those of them who look at us like, role models. So because women have a lot of potential, but we are always unsure of what we can give because we seldom have confidence to speak with boldness. Thank you.
All right, thank you for a bit. Professor Inga, I want to ask you to share some examples of the way we can move forward. What has worked in your own context? What needs to be enhanced? And what are some of the examples you can share? Professor Inga?
Thank you very much. Before going to answering your question, I would like also to stress about the situation and new challenges which are coming in our region, Central Eastern European, and a new challenge which is coming from the war. And today we also celebrate International Women's Day, but Lithuanian educators call this year's International Women's Day with a dedication to solidarity with Ukrainian women. We all understand that even our gender equality plans, our actions which are planned already in advance together with all European community will be adjusted now as our educators, our staff members, which are fighting the pandemic outcomes, now have another outcomes of refugees, and not only take care about their own families, the upcoming educational process, the ongoing educational and research process, but also the support to refugees, women and children which are coming and flowing to our countries, to Romania, to Poland, to Lithuania and all Baltic regions. So I want to stress this important issue. And in connection with this, I would also like to indicate that research indicates a clear correlation between gender equality and the maturity of the democracy. And those countries who are enjoying freedom, democracy, rule of law for many of decades, they are on the top of gender equality list according to the Global Gender Gap Index of 2021. Meanwhile, countries who are suffering from unstable politics, armed conflicts and dictatorship are at the last positions. So right here, I want to urge the academic society to consolidate all our resources to stand together for peace, democracy, equity, and equality. Answering your question regarding concrete institutional examples, what has worked, what has not, I can mention that we are as institution, we are in the process of implementation of gender equality plan, of monitoring and issuing concrete measures for our staff members. I can say that now we are also in the process of establishing educational possibilities for the kids of our staff members and also of our refugees who are in our dormitories. So what have worked in our institution, I can say that it's very specific as we are specializing in social sciences and humanities, and we have much over 50% of staff members also in leadership position of women. So first of all, what was very important that several years ago we had no women in public universities leaders position. Now the situation completely changed in Lithuania, and we have about 30% of women rectors, and the situation in the institutions are changing also immediately. As each year we observe the higher percentage of women in leaders' position on senates, on other collegial bodies of the institution. So a lot is being done, but now we are not stopping. And when we promote women's leadership in STEM disciplines, we also, as social science institution, now we promote men's participation in social sciences, in humanities, because we have an opposite situation in social sciences and humanities. So there always should be a balance and the concrete measures which could be applied to the concrete disciplines.
All right, thank you very, very much. I'm afraid that our time has run out, but thank you for the contributions. We've heard that really we need to start at the lowest level in building the pipeline so that we can support women to get into leadership positions, but also we need some structures that will build that kind of support through legislature, through mentoring, through giving them opportunities, both financial and social, to move forward with it. And ladies and gentlemen, I wish to take this back to our moderator so that we can get to the next level. I think we are going again now into question and answers from the audience. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Juan and Tarangui, for facilitating this panel discussion. And we see that we need much more time. This is really the launch of a global conversation on the topics that we have here. There is excellent work being done by ESSA, wonderful work being done by EWORA, wonderful work being done by all of you experts in your own fields, were it Carmen or Mary or Folabit or Inga at your institutions and organizations, and Pam at the global level as well. So I believe that what we would like to do now, I saw a few questions in the chat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Adeduntan Segun Olasamni has asked for some examples and some best frameworks for mainstreaming gender into higher education research. Also for some practical tips for indeed breaking these biases. I would believe that some of the answers to that have been provided by the speakers in the presentations, but much more needs to be done. And I would like to invite Adeduntan Segun Olasanni to also join the working group that is about to being launched. Francesco Catani is here to represent the work of Unibo, University of Bologna, and the lead in the IAU Global Cluster on Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular Sustainable Development Goal 5, where the University of Bologna has done extraordinary work publishing as well on the work of universities from around the world on SDG 5. And please read the comment in the question and answer section, as there is more information there that we can share when we will do the follow-up message to everyone. André Sursock had a very good question as well. Should we separate the fights for inequality, or should the different fights come together? There was a response, if you look in there was a response already by Carmen there that yes, of course, the different inequalities can be touched upon jointly. Yet at the same time, let me read it because I'm not convinced that everybody can see that. Professor Carmen Fenol says to the question asked by André Sursock about after all, women are 50% of the population. Generally, however, inclusiveness or lack thereof usually embraces minorities and women, and that the actions to combat discrimination are very similar across discriminated groups. And her question was, why not then have joint actions to fight discrimination together? To which Professor Fenol said that fighting together is fine, that everybody should join this fight, men included, but also different organizations and different stakeholders in society at large, but that each discriminated group needs different actions as it is discriminated for different reasons. And she argues that women don't fight for a small share of the space, but for 50% of it. And so indeed, that is asking for a real space and not only a small part of a smaller room. And what Professor Fenol says, we are a real threat for the establishment or for the established reality of today. And we will have to move considerably and not simply make us a bit of a room. The biggest discrimination, she says, in history is that against women. So gender gaps have a huge and transversal dimension. I think you make a very strong statement there, and there's not another question specifically that I see, but I will go back to the space. That part of the problem, so there is a question by Uche Emetoram saying, I am of the view that part of the problem of women in achieving leadership are women themselves, okay, in terms of bias, inferiority, complex, pulling their fellow women down, allowing men to come between them, competing for attention from men, resulting in hate, lack of support for fellow women, women not encouraging women, women gossiping about fellow women, etc. These factors need to be addressed for a change of attitude if we must make progress. What do you think about this, and what would you say? I think all these questions and comments are absolutely key and important to tackle. Many of them also talk to the need to deconstruct stereotypical views on behaviors in general, also to deconstruct the behaviors in general when it comes to gender issues, and it's not a binary dimension either, men, women, but it's become much more rich today with many other dimensions to gender that we have to take into consideration when discussing these. I would like to actually maybe give 2 minutes to each of the organizations to react to this, maybe Pam, maybe Lucy and Gulsun, but we're running out of time. And before I do so, we have a second poll that we would like to share, a poll that will then next to be addressed by Jennifer Ude, once we will have given the floor to Pam, Gulsun and Lucy. So can you pull up the poll? Your colleague at the International Association of Universities, Giorgio Marinoni, is going to pull up the poll. No, would you like to do that later? I see that in the chat. So I will give the floor to you then, Pam, please, then Gulsun, and then Lucy.
I think in 2 minutes, I will just say that there are so many different issues that we do share all around the world. And to tackle them, I think we need a focus for the further discussions on specific issues, because there's so much to learn, so much to share. And one thing, coming back to the merit system, I think it's very, very important that women gets the possibility to get the merits, because the legitimacy for being a leader is also in your background, and we should not have any side tracks for women. It's very, very important to give them the possibilities from the beginning. And the third thing I would like to say is that we have to work with the mentoring. Mentoring is so important, and we can share that all around the world. We don't have to be in the same country. We don't have to be in the same region even to be mentors to push women.
I think Fola Bit and Dr. Fenol also made that case, and I would agree. But Gulsun, let me give you the floor.
Thank you, Hilki. I think what have been said, they're all very important, issues that should be mentioned here in this webinar. I would like just to stress the issue of work-life balance. This is not widely discussed here. I think it is very important. We may have mentoring in place, we may have laws and everything in place, but if we do not provide suitable conditions, which includes work-life balance issues in it, then it would not work. So I have had that experience. If you allow me, just would like to share my own experience in my university. We provided K-12 schools in campus housing. That is very important in Istanbul, which has a 16 million population here. So when you provide all of those facilities and arranging the, lecture hours and everything accordingly, then women become more comfortable in their work. So that created a lot of impact on the increasing women professors in Istanbul Technical University. During the 8 years time, the women professors ratio went up from 16% to 29%. Of course, setting a role model as a rector, it is another important issue. But I believe that work-life balance is a very, very important issue to be tackled for solving this problem.
Wonderful, thank you. Again, as I said, I will close the part for the IAU here by handing over to Lucy and also going to the last part of our conversation here today and for the call to action. I think this is a beautiful start of a longer cooperation between EWORA, ESSA, and the IAU. Thank you very much for the excellent speakers, and I know you had much more to say. We will give you that opportunity in the future. So Lucy, I turn to you for the conclusion and to as well, Jennifer, to conclude with some reflections and next actions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I mean, thank you for everyone's energetic and really focused inputs today. I think, you know, for us at ESSA, we get really excited when the conversation turns to action and we see how all this information actually supports change and people doing things within their organizations, but also supporting other organizations for change. And what's really uplifting about this conversation is we know there are things that we can do and things that we know will make the change. So we don't just have to sit here and cross our fingers and hope that things will change. Stuff is happening and things are, we will see that impact for women. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So just to say, sure. Brilliant, thank you. And so just to kind of finish by saying from ESSA's perspective, yes, we will be wanting to dig in deeper to some of those issues raised today. There is still a need for that, more knowledge, more research, but we also want to start as people are taking action, understanding what action is and how that change is happening, so that we're documenting that so that we can all learn from each other and improve from each other, so that we are driving the implementation of this research, working with our partners to improve, not just improve what they do, but inspire further action from other people as well. So for us, this is about inspiring change as well. And thank you everyone here today for that very inspiring conversation.
And maybe just one more point, just to say that, you know, we've started the conversation, we're listening to our stakeholders. We really see this as the beginning of a further conversation around improving women in leadership. And I think what we've heard today is that the issues are common around the globe. So we've really started a conversation to share knowledge and insights that we can all build on. This slide just shares a few insights that we have gathered at ESSA from some of the discussions that we've had with stakeholders. We've already started to talk about, dig a bit deeper into the problems, into some of the themes, but also into concept initiatives. And I think the conversations that we've had today have identified a number of other themes and concepts that we can dig into further and lead to action as well, particularly around the research assessment process, funding for research. I think these are areas that we haven't really covered a lot in the work that we've been doing as well. So really wanted to take the opportunity at the end to capture everybody's interest in exploring joint funding opportunities and engaging in further research and topics, and more specifically, what topics you would be interested in talking about further in partnership with us and IAU and EWORA, and wanted to just give the opportunity to put a poll up for everybody to really capture everybody's interest. I know the panelists can't, but the audience can, really just to capture everybody's interest. That would be great. So we'll spend the last minute on this. And I wonder, Hilaja, while that's going on, if you want to share the thanks, because I know we only have a minute left.
I did my part there. I would like to thank you all for the wonderful cooperation, but I think I will give you the famous last words.
Sure. Well, thank you on behalf of, ESSA, IAU, EWORA. Just really thank you, particularly to all the presenters and the panelists who have joined us today. So Pam Fredman, IAU, Lucy, CEO at ESSA, Gulsun from EWORA as well. Krista, thank you for your support on the ESSA side with the research. Our moderator, Professor Mwanda from Kenya as well. He did an amazing job today. We had 2 members from Africa. So Professor Mary Okwako from the National Council of Higher Education in Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us. Folabit Novell from the Global Students Forum. Thank you so much for giving us the student perspectives, and Inga as well from Lithuania. So really thank you for all the discussions. I think you can all see that there's so much more to discuss. But really, I think if we can establish this global working group, we can continue the discussion, we can actually support each other in developing concept initiatives and really drive action in our individual regions, but also across the globe as well. I think there's lots of knowledge and sharing that we can continue to do with each other. So thanks very much, everybody, for your time and your contributions today, and happy International Women's Day.